above the Conservatives. What's for certain is we now have three parties polling somewhere in the 20s, and we're the ones on the up. Now look, that is out there shared by tens of millions of people. Let me be clear. I don't support street violence. I don't support thuggery in any way at all. So if you take a legal activity and you effectively criminalise it, you hand it literally into the hands of the bad guys.
Ever seen a politician turn the tables on a reporter so fast it'll make your head spin? Nigel Farage just did exactly that, and it's causing quite a stir. In a recent interview, Farage didn't just answer questions, he took control. When pressed about party vetting, he fired back with a scathing critique of media bias that left the reporter speechless. Want to see how he did it? The tension was palpable as Nigel Farage strode into the interview room. The air crackled with anticipation, both from Farage's supporters and his critics. Across from him sat a reporter known for their relentless questioning style, a journalist who had made a career out of cornering politicians with tough inquiries. As the cameras began rolling, the reporter wasted no time diving into their strategy. They focused on party vetting processes, a topic that had been causing headaches for political leaders across the spectrum. The reporter's eyes gleamed with the scent of a potential scandal, pressing Farage on the details of his party's procedures. At first, Farage responded with his trademark confidence. He parried the initial questions with practiced ease, but a hint of frustration began to creep into his voice. The reporter, sensing weakness, pushed harder. They brought up specific cases where vetting had allegedly failed, demanding explanations and accountability.
TV station, there's no national newspaper, Belgium is not a nation, and maybe that's why you're happy to sign up to a higher European level.
In doing so, not just do the right thing, but maybe mend some fences between this government and the incoming.
Farage's brow furrowed as he realized the direction this interview was taking. He found himself on the defensive, trying to explain complex internal processes while the reporter interrupted with follow-up questions. The back and forth grew more heated, with Farage struggling to steer the conversation towards broader political issues. The reporter, emboldened by Farage's apparent discomfort, doubled down on their approach. They fired off a series of rapid-fire questions about transparency and leadership, leaving little room for nuanced responses. Farage's frustration became increasingly evident, his answers growing shorter and more clipped. As the interview progressed, a realization dawned on Farage. This wasn't just tough questioning. It felt like a trap designed to undermine his credibility. He glanced at the clock, then back at the reporter's smug expression. In that moment, Farage knew he had to change tactics or risk losing control of the narrative entirely.
Tax cigarettes to the extent where they're now £35 a packet. So the criminal gangs now don't bother with cocaine. Forget that, cocaine's boring. Cigarettes are very exciting.
There were people around him that thought it was the right thing that I came.
I thought you were giving all your time to Clacton now as its newest MP.
Well, I'm allowed to come to America on a trip like this, particularly in these circumstances.
The tension in the room reached a fever pitch. Viewers at home could almost feel the electricity through their screens. Farage's supporters held their breath, wondering how their champion would respond to this onslaught. His critics leaned forward, hoping for a misstep they could pounce on. Farage took a deep breath, his mind racing through possible responses. He could continue on the defensive, but that would only play into the reporter's hands. He could try to change the subject, but that might make him appear evasive. No, Farage decided it was time for a different approach entirely. With a glint in his eye, he prepared to turn the tables on his interrogator. Just as the reporter thought they had Farage cornered, a sly smile crept across his face. "Let me ask you something," he began, his voice steady and deliberate. What followed was a masterclass in media criticism that left the interviewer visibly shaken. Farage seized control of the conversation, interrupting the reporter mid-question. He launched into a scathing critique of media bias, drawing on years of frustration with what he perceived as unfair treatment.
20 years as an MEP, but it's not quite the same link or same responsibility with constituents. I will do my absolute best to put Clacton on the map.
Those communities have little faith or trust or belief that government can make their lives better. Indeed, what I found knocking on doors were people saying, "We want to work."
For too long, Farage declared, the mainstream media has pushed a narrative that doesn't reflect reality. It's time we address this head on. The reporter's eyes widened, clearly caught off guard by this sudden shift in dynamics. As Farage gained momentum, he began listing specific instances of what he considered unfair coverage. He pointed to headlines that misrepresented his policies, interviews where his words were taken out of context, and opinion pieces that painted him as a political pariah. Connecting these examples to broader issues, Farage argued that media bias was eroding public trust in politics. When you consistently distort the views of certain politicians, he said, you're not just attacking individuals, you're undermining the very foundations of our democracy. The power dynamics in the room had shifted dramatically. Farage, once on the defensive, now commanded the interview. He spoke with passion and conviction, his words resonating with viewers who had long harbored similar suspicions about media integrity.
Sound organisation on the ground, right across Wales, and it's from that we can support our candidate.
But give us in a few years' time the kind of government we need to turn round the decline in this country. Don't just think Elon or Nick Candy are going to save us.
As Farage's argument reached its crescendo, he articulated a clear message about the need for accountability in journalism. We need a media landscape that fairly represents all viewpoints, he asserted, not one that pushes a predetermined narrative. The climax came swiftly and decisively. Farage, having made his point, decided to end the interview on his own terms. I think we're done here, he said, rising from his chair. Perhaps next time we can have a conversation about real issues rather than playing gotcha games. With that, Farage walked out, leaving the reporter stunned and silent. It was a powerful statement against perceived media bias, one that would undoubtedly spark further debate about the role and responsibilities of political journalism in today's polarized landscape. As the dust settled on Farage's dramatic exit, the media landscape buzzed with reactions. Some hailed him as a champion against biased reporting, while others criticized his confrontational approach.
Law and order, folks, on our streets is breaking down. This Prime Minister hasn't got an earthly clue how to deal with it.
The days of this project are over. We want to live in nation states, not false, artificial creations.
The incident sparked intense debates about the state of political journalism and the growing distrust between public figures and the press. This clash between Farage and the reporter highlighted a deeper issue plaguing modern media. The line between tough questioning and agenda-driven reporting has become increasingly blurred, leaving many to question the objectivity of mainstream outlets. It's a problem that extends far beyond this single interview, touching on the very foundations of our democratic discourse.
You must do what we tell you to do. Yes, I mean, Rishi Sunak's plans were completely mad, that in 10 years' time a 25-year-old could buy a smoke and a 24-year-old couldn't.
Tories have failed us completely, betrayed us completely. Labour are utterly hopeless. You all know the country's going down the tubes.
As we move forward, we're left to ponder, how can we rebuild trust between politicians, the media, and the public? Is there a way to ensure fair and balanced coverage without sacrificing the media's role as a watchdog? The answers to these questions may well shape the future of political discourse in our increasingly polarized world.